Well, hello and welcome to this Fotospeed video with me, Tim Jones. Today what we're going to be looking at is something I have been requested, to be honest. A few weeks ago I did a video on print sharpening and the best ways, I think, to kind of look at print sharpening. And now I went through some little tips I've got in Lightroom to be able to sharpen for print. But I had quite a few emails and a couple of phone calls and some comments as well about talking a little bit about creative sharpening for print as well, and what that means and how we actually kind of go about doing it. So it'd be really good to actually dive into the computer today and have a look at creative sharpening. So that's what we're going to do. So before we get started though, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Just click that subscribe button in the bottom right. Also, don't forget to sign up to the Fotospeed newsletter on photospeed.com to keep up with all the latest news and receive exclusive discounts only available in the newsletter. And if you haven't already, download the Fotospeed Art of Printing. The free ebook from us here at Fotospeed covers everything from getting started with your printer to bookmaking and mounting and framing and absolutely everything in between. So if you're looking to get into printing, it's a great place to start. But also if you're a seasoned printer and just want to have a double check you're doing everything right, or just want to pick up a few extra little skills and learn a little bit more about the color management side and things like that, it is a great resource for you as well. So don't forget to download the Fotospeed Art of Printing on photospeed.com. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into creative sharpening. Okay, so what is creative sharpening? A couple of weeks ago, we looked at global adjustments to our images on the screen to be able to get the best print and the sharpest print we can on different types of paper. Now, we found out that just sharpening for screen and doing it by eye was actually perfect for the semi-gloss, luster, brighter type of papers. Now, we also found though we do need to up that quite a bit to be able to kind of get a level of sharpening on matte papers as well. But we also saw the contrast increase as well. So if you're ever having flat prints coming out of the printer, it could be you just need to increase that sharpening very slightly. But we found that the secret is to increase the sharpening to enough of a level that it's actually affecting the print, but without seeing any artifacts coming on. Now, within Lightroom, we can quite easily use the masking tool to help us to do that, or we can add a little bit of grain and things like that. But today we're looking at localized sharpening or creative sharpening. Now, this will use sharpening as a tool, and it will enable us to highlight different parts of the images and things. So I've picked a portrait and a landscape, and I'm going to show you the different ways that creative sharpening can help us in these different types of photography. And very simply, I'm not going to do anything to the files. All I'm going to be doing is changing where the sharpening is. Now I'm going to do this in Photoshop using masks because it's probably the easiest way to do it, because you need those layers to be able to do it correctly, I think. Now you can do this in Capture One as well, using the layers option in there. Now this is where Lightroom falls down very slightly, because you can't apply the full benefits of the sharpening module within your masks, etc. So we do need to kind of go into Photoshop, or if you've got Capture One as well and you edit in Capture One, you can do this in Capture One as well. But because the only reason is we've got those layers, and also when you apply a mask in Lightroom, you can't have access to the whole development tab. You're only limited to a very small selection. So that's what we're going to look at. So let's dive into the computer and we'll make a start, and I'll show you the differences that we can make by just changing where we're putting the sharpening in an image. Then I'm going to make some prints and we'll actually have a look and compare and see if I've done a decent job. Okay, so let's get into the computer and I'll take you through some techniques and how we can go about doing this. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to selectively sharpen and creatively sharpen this black and white portrait here. I'm not really going to do much else to it. I might do just a very, very basic levels adjustment to start with, because I quite like perhaps a little bit brighter and just pinch the histogram in a little bit, just to give it a little bit of punch there. Just possibly there, because I like things a little bit more contrasty. So I might just do that. Now, I've just given it an overall sharpening. The person who did this is a stock image, so the person who did it actually did not a bad job of the skin and things like that. It looks absolutely great. So what I'm going to do is just improve it. And we've got to remember, when we're doing selective sharpening, this isn't going to be a dramatic change. It's going to be quite subtle, and it's just going to help us to bring things together and highlight things very, very subtly. So what I'm going to do here, very simply, is I'm going to highlight the eyes a little bit, get a little bit of sharpening going on in here, so they're a little bit sharper. And also the lips. And I might do a little bit of the hair. However, we'll have a look and see if that looks right. Now, I'm going to take you through 2 ways to sharpen in Photoshop that I find the easiest and the ones I use most commonly. Now, if you go down to Filter and go down to the Sharpen tab, you'll see there are lots of sharpening options in here. So you can experiment with the ones that you think work for you best. Maybe it's just a simple unsharpen mask or smart sharpen, etc. in here. However, I'm not going to use any of those. I'm going to use 2 things. One of them is going to be the raw camera filter, or camera raw filter, and also the high pass filter as well in here. Those are the 2 things I'm going to be using. But first of all, because I'm going to be applying a filter, and it's going to be applying this in a destructive way, to be honest. So once I click OK on my filter, then we're stuck there. We can't change it. We can't alter it. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this goes for both of these processes, or any filter you want to apply and then go back and re-edit in the future, then what I'm going to do is we're just going to duplicate our background layer just by clicking on it and dragging down to the new layer tab. Now I've got 2 layers here. Now I always do this just so I'm protected. So I've got a background layer here that is always there, and it's just going to be nice and safe. So I'm not going to damage any pixels or have any horribleness going on. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this background copy and then scroll down to convert to smart object. Now, when I click on this, not a lot happens, to be honest, apart from we get a little icon in our layers tab down here, just to say we got a smart object there. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about what smart objects are and what they do, but basically, for the purposes of this, what they'll do is they will allow us to go back into that filter and re-edit over and over again. And it will also give us options to have a mask and do some lovely things with it. So always convert to a smart object. And then what we can do is when we apply a filter now, what will happen is it will then apply it as a smart filter. So like I said, then we get a mask and we get adjustments and loads of things going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the camera raw filter first and how we go about sharpening, because so anyone who watched my Lightroom video a few weeks ago, you'll recognize this as the development tab of Lightroom, which is absolutely fantastic. And we can transpose a lot of the things we did in the development tab of Lightroom into here. So we've got exposure, we've got highlights, clarity, and everything going on in here. You can even use the Alt key like I showed you last week. So we can use that to adjust our white points and highlights and things as well. But we can also use it on our sharpening tab as well. Now, the sharpening is in the detailed section here. And you'll notice it looks exactly the same as Lightroom. And we've got our little adjustment here, so we can add the amount of sharpening we'd like in here. So we're going to put it on quite strong. We'll probably put it on about 56. And then we'll do the radius. So again, we can hold the Alt key down, hold the radius, and then we get this lovely high pass information that comes through. And what I'm looking for is somewhere around just so I can start to see the picture coming through. I don't want to go right up to the top because then we'll get horrible artifacts going on. Again, with the detail, just bring it up just a little bit so we can just see it coming through there. And very simply, I'm just doing this by eye on the screen. Now the mask I'm going to leave at 0. However, if you do click it, this works exactly the same as the mask in Lightroom, and it can be a very quick way to just highlight the parts you would like to sharpen. So everything that's white means everything's sharpened. And then as we move this to the right-hand side, things start going black, and that means they'll be masked out, so no sharpening will be affected. And we can just keep going until, actually, we haven't got a bad thing. That's kind of what we're going to try and attempt, but we're going to do it in a better way than that. So quite a powerful tool, this. And this is all with Alt held down on the keyboard. If you don't hold Alt, you don't really notice a lot going on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click OK on that. And then what happens is it's applied that sharpening for me. But you'll notice here, underneath in my Layers tab, I've actually got a mask, which is this white bit here. So white means everything's going to be masked, and black is masks out for us. It blocks the effect going through onto the picture. So at the minute, everything is going to be masked. Okay, now underneath we've got the Camera Raw filter. If I click on this, then we go back into the Camera Raw, all our settings are there, and we can actually just re-edit the mask. So absolutely fantastic. If we hadn't turned it to a smart object, we wouldn't be able to go back in and re-edit this. We'd have to keep kind of going back, undoing, going back through our history tab and things to go back through. So just click OK. Also, this little icon here is the blend options. If I double click on it, this is actually the blend option. So we can use this to blend in our mask if needed. But with this filter, generally don't need to. It's when we come to the high pass filter that we'll use this. So I'm just going to click OK on there and leave that for the minute. Okay, so what we need to do now is we actually need to start masking out. Now there's two ways we can do this. We can get our paintbrush here, and with black selected, we can just draw in, and you'll notice just down in our Layers tab here, you'll start to see some black smudges appear. Basically, that's where we are masking out what is going to be affected by the sharpening. And if we turn the mask on and off, we should start to see some of that effect. Now, that's one way of doing it. However, let me just go back a second. So what I quite like to do though is click on our paint can here, our paint bucket tool, and then I'm just going to turn the whole mask black just by clicking in here. So basically that is just masked everything out. So that is not going to let any of the sharpening through, and we can now, by using a white brush, we can then start to actually apply sharpening to where we'd like it. And we're going to do this by hand, to be honest. So we're just going to zoom in a little bit, and then I'm just going to very simply just click over the eye. And then I'm just going to very simply just pop a little bit in there, and just a little bit in here as well, over the lips. And very quickly just applied that sharpening. It's very subtle. So let me just zoom in a little bit so you can see. So it's very, very subtle, just turning it on and off there. So that's off, and now that's on. And like I said, really subtle. Now it could be that now when we go into our filter, we can increase that sharpening a little bit and just click OK, because we're not going to see many artifacts here. So we perhaps could put in a little bit more. So now we've got that, and it looks really kind of quite nice. And that's very, very simply how we would use the camera raw filter to add sharpening quite selectively. Now, let me just delete this layer, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do that with the high pass filter as well. Now, which one you use, completely up to you. You could even use one of the other filters, but the process is going to be the same. I'm just going to delete that layer. Now I'm just going to drag this layer down, make a background copy, just so I've got that background and it's all nice and selected and we can see a before and after quite nicely. Then what I'm going to do, right click on it, go down to Smart Object, just make it a Smart Object so it's all nice and protected. Now, where this differs is I'm going to go down to Filter, into my Other section, and then click on High Pass. So in here, I'm just going to click on High Pass. Now, what I'm going to do is just set a radius of around about 2 in here. And then what I want to see is just the image again, just starting to come through. So about there. So I think actually, I might just go 1.2, there we are. So we're just starting to see the eye come round in my preview window there. Okay, so now I've clicked OK, you'll see everything goes grey. And if I zoom in a little bit, you can start to see that high frequency information there. But what we don't want to do is actually print a picture that's grey. So what we need to do is we've got our mask here, but we're going to go back to these 2 little lines with these 2 little arrows on, and this will be our blend options. So just double click in here. And now what I can do is select the mode. Now for the high pass filter and sharpening, what we're looking for is the 4th section down, starts with overlay and ends with hard mix. Now if I click one of these, you will see my picture reappears. So it's blended those 2 together, adding that amount of sharpening. Now each of these, if I just zoom in on the picture, you'll start to see that each of these starts to affect the amount of contrast that is going to be applied to that sharpening. If I turn it off, then it's not there. But if I say overlay, or hard light and vivid light are going to be probably the hardest. Linear light is going to be quite a big increase in sharpening, perhaps a little bit too much there. I quite like vivid light for this actually, so I'm going to stick with that. But you can see it has actually affected the skin, and it's really sharpened the skin here. So for a portrait, what we're going to do again is just click on our mask, and we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to use the paint bucket method. So I'm going to click on my paint bucket, make everything nice and black, so nothing's being sharpened. And then what I'm going to do is click on the paintbrush, click, so I've got white selected in my color picker here. Make sure I'm highlighting the mask as well. And then what I can do is just very simply just go over the eyes and perhaps a little bit on the lips here. So we've got a nice highlight there. And now when I zoom out, you can probably see it's just giving it a little pop there. And if I turn this layer on and off, you will probably see the difference. Now the high pass filter is really nice because it doesn't usually create too many artifacts, and it gives a really nice strong increase of contrast and sharpness to the picture. So really, really nice kind of effect there. So that's how we do kind of those 2 techniques on a portrait. Obviously we could keep going and we could perhaps do a little bit on the hat if we wanted to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this one with the sharpening and without the sharpening. And then we can have a look actually on the page, just see if it's made a difference. On screen, it's made quite a big difference, I think. But on paper, that will be slightly muted, but it's just how we can really start to be very selective in what we're doing. Okay, so let's give these a print, then we'll have a look at them. Now, I said I would do a landscape as well. Now, it's more of a seascape, I think, but a landscapey kind of shot that some of us may take, a nice easy shot. Now, it's a color shot as well, which is slightly different. But what I want to do is I want to very subtly highlight the detail in here. Now, if I do a global adjustment on here, it's going to affect everything, including the sky and the sand and things. But really, I want to just do a little bit of creative sharpening on the waves here, or the kind of the surf coming in to the beach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a high pass filter. Now you can apply either one, but I think a high pass filter will work quite well with this. So again, I'm just going to drag my background layer down. Then I'm going to convert that, just duplicate it, and then convert to a smart object. Then go up to my filter tab, and then go to other, and find high pass, which is the second one down. Just click on that one. Everything goes grey here. And then what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I'm increasing the radius so I can really see. I'm going to be quite strong on this one, to be honest, because don't worry too much about it. I just want to increase it quite strongly here. So maybe I think about 2 pixels I'm going to go for. So I'm just going to click OK. And now again, we've got this grey picture. So we just need to click on my 2 lines with 2 arrows down the bottom here. And then I'm going to click on vivid light again, just to see what we've got here. Now, I'm just going to go through and have a quick look. See, I think vivid light again is going to be quite nice, I think, for this one. But already, actually, it's made quite a difference. If you look at it there, it looks a bit flat there, where with that on, it's just brought those waves up and things, but we're still getting everything being affected. So I'm going to go over to my paint bucket, click on my mask, which is this white page in my layers tab. Just click in there and make sure I've got black selected and just click in there. And then that will apply the mask for me so everything is masked out. Now with my brush selected and white selected in my color picker, I can then start to just draw on the bits I would like sharpened. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get quite a big brush to start with, because I quite like this area here. And just these little white parts here. Now, I'm also just going to pop a little bit in just in here. Now, what happens is when I'm doing this, I've got quite a soft brush as well. I haven't got a hard brush because I want it to just feather out very, very slightly. I'm just going to put a little bit in these little white bits here. Don't worry too much about getting bits of the sand and things, because it will just smooth everything out for us. So let me just do up here a little bit. There we are. And now I very selectively sharpen that area. So if I turn it off, you'll start to see, it's very subtle, but you'll just see the sea and things just come in very, very slightly in there. That's how we do it in a landscape as well. You could highlight a mountain in this way or a rock in the foreground and things. It's just about this selective masking with masks and with different filters as well. But what we can do, because we created this as a smart filter on a smart object, if we click on high pass now, we can actually just start to adjust this. So we can really start to kind of go back in and re-edit and make adjustments in here. We can also click on our blend options and we can change the amount that's going to be being affected in there. Okay, so again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print this one on just a matte paper. I think I'm going to go for the NST Bright White on this one. And I'm going to print it without the sharpening and then with the sharpening. And then we'll have a look and we'll compare. Okay, so let's get those printing and then we'll have a look. Okay, so I've printed some of the prints off. I've got the 2 pictures of the portrait here. Now I've printed these on Platinum Baryta. So one with the sharpening and one without, and I can definitely see a difference here. Also, I have the seascape or the landscape of the sea, whatever you want to call it, here, and I printed this on the NST Bright White. And there is quite a dramatic difference between the two. Now, let me just start with the portrait though, because if I just put these out on the table here, we can hopefully see that on the left-hand side, this one here, we have the one without any sharpening on, and then the one here with the sharpening. Now, we can see there is actually quite a difference. I think this one would be absolutely fine if you were just putting it kind of on its own. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think once you see the sharpened version, then there is quite a big difference, to be honest, between the two. I would probably go with the sharpened version. I may even say, if I was being hypercritical, that in the eye detail here, where we've just added a little bit of that sharpening, I might just bring it back very, very, very slightly here. It's possibly just a tiny little bit over sharpened, possibly, for my liking. However, it looks pretty good and it looks great. Now, yeah, I think Barito, absolutely perfect. I could have gone NST Bright White as well. I think that would have looked absolutely great as well with it. But I wanted to do a different paper so you can have a look at it. But yeah, really, really nice. Okay, so let me just bring across the seascape here. Let me just switch them around so they're in the right orientation here. So this one on the left-hand side, on my left, should I say, is the unsharpened one. And then we've got the sharpened sea and the surf here, which has been sharpened. And again, it looks absolutely great. Looks really, really good, really, really fantastic. And I think the sharpening has added something to the picture. So without it, it does look a little bit flat in this area down here. But I think with it, it just adds a little more detail in here. We could have gone either way. We could actually sharpen the sky at the top here, possibly. That might even the picture out a little bit more, but leave the surf as it is. But it's changing the focus of the picture with sharpening. And I think that is what this type of sharpening, this localized sharpening, can really do. Really kind of highlight different parts. It can balance pictures as well for you. This picture perhaps is a little bit out of balance. So obviously we could have cropped down perhaps a little bit here, but we could also try and balance it with the sky possibly. But it's only since I've printed it that I've kind of seen that. So I hope you can see that sharpening can be a really, really powerful tool, and we can use it as a tool, not just something that we add to make our pictures look sharp, but also as a creative tool. So highlight and balance certain parts of the picture so everything looks really nice and crisp as it should. Especially if we've got portraits and things, we can really start to use sharpening to smooth some skin and things like that as well, and highlight the eye detail and really make certain things in that portrait pop out as well. Well, I hope that's been useful and shown you another side of sharpening and how we can use it as that tool like I've just talked about. Now, as always, please don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button in the bottom right. Also subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive discounts and all the news from Fotospeed. And also don't forget to download The Art of Printing, the free ebook from Fotospeed, covering everything from turning on your printer to framing and mounting and color management and absolutely everything else in between. So also don't forget that we put out a new video every Thursday on the Fotospeed YouTube channel. So if you've subscribed, you should get those notifications of when those come out. And on that note, I will see you next Thursday. Bye-bye.